So welcome back, everyone. And my next guest is Clint Smith. And Clint is an attorney. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Let's talk a little bit about what it is that you do. You're here to kind of educate. You're an author. And where is your book? Here it is. I am so excited also to talk about it because it's a book that you want to be also offered to everyone. So let's talk about you and what you do.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting topic. You know, when you think about estate planning, everybody gets their heart rate up. But no, the idea here is that we don't want to leave our messes for our kids and our beneficiaries to clean up, although that is a pretty prevalent attitude among some. So what I want to do is I want to offer peace of mind. I want to sit people down and say, okay, let's make a plan here so that when you pass away, and it's all going to happen to all of us, some sooner than later, and you never know exactly when it's going to be, let's have our ducks in a row so that I don't leave a big mess for my kids to have to deal with probate courts and attorneys and appraisers and accountants and all the stuff that goes with probate.
So let's talk about the book. It's Estate Planning, a plain English guide to wills and trust. Why should everybody have one?
Well, I think most people are a little intimidated by just the idea of estate planning. You know, I don't know what a will is. I don't know what a testatrix is. I don't want to know what an executor is.
I couldn't even say it.
All these fancy terms that you hear about, and people get a little intimidated. They think, first of all, that you have to have, you have to be a Rockefeller or something to have an estate.
Right.
And the fact is, it doesn't take much to reach the threshold, at least in Arizona, to where you have to go through probate if you pass away. So the idea here is to set up your plan so that when you pass away, or actually even while you're on your way down, you have part of the estate plan is powers of attorney, where people can handle business for you. They can talk to your doctors. There's your last directives. I don't want to be kept alive artificially. All of those elements are part of a complete estate plan. But the centerpiece is a trust that says, this is what I want to have happen with my assets when I pass away. And I'm telling my trustee, I'm designating who the trustee is. I'm going to tell him what to do with it.
And there's a lot of people that make mistakes or don't even do it at all.
Yeah, and so part of one of those chapters in the book is what happens if I don't have a will at all. And basically then you're telling the state of Arizona, thank you very much for writing my will for me and telling me how things are going to go when I die.
Okay.
And that is not a place you want to go.
Let's talk about the book, though, in terms of what it has for each, several of the things that they can get an idea, because we're going to open up the lines to the audience for everybody to get entered in the win. He wants to give away at least 5 of these, so we're going to open it up to the audience, and you can get the book. It is plain, and it is something that people, we've heard about it. We know what it is. We tend to put it off on the back burner all the time, and yet it's not something you really should put there. So what we're going to do is open the lines to the audience, if it's okay with you. Our number here is 602-277-5369. Toll free, it's 1-866-536-1100. And everyone who's calling in is going to get 5 of them. We're going to give 5 people these books. Estate Planning, a plain English guide to wills and trust. And it's by Clint W. Smith, J.D. What's the J.D.?
J.D. is Juris Doctor. That's the name of the degree that I got from Arizona State University in 1985. And basically, I'm a doctor like all lawyers here are, but nobody calls us doctors, and that's okay. But J.D. is just the designation from that degree.
You work with people nationwide, and our number here is 602-277-5369. Toll free, it's 1-866-536-1100. It's an informational book. It's a way that you sound like you're reading it, but you could also breathe through it and see what it is that you need to do. Maybe a checklist. What does it have in here?
Yeah, it's got a lot of checklists, a lot of to-dos. Each chapter has what I called a prescription, just to be cute with the Juris Doctor thing. The estate planning doctor is sort of a name we've labeled ourselves with. And so you get to the end of the chapter and it says, okay, A, B, C, D, this is what I need to do. So each chapter has that, and there are lots of steps along the way. Not everybody needs all of the steps, of course. There's parts in here that talk about if you're a professional, a licensed professional, and you set up your corporation or your limited liability company as a professional company, only licensed people can hold ownership interests in those. Well, okay, what happens to that when I die? So somebody needs to be able to provide for that, because your spouse, usually at least, isn't a licensed professional in the same profession that you are. So can they own that? It doesn't really work. So but the trust can provide for that. So
now,
there's a whole chapter on that.
Yes, and you're located, if people want to work with you, you're located in Mesa, and his website is Estate Planning DR for going on that doctor sort of thing of what he really is anyway, what they used to call everybody. His phone number is 480-807-9300. He does free 1 hour consultations, and he's giving away 5 of these books. He wrote the book for you to understand what you need to do, and if you've done it and you haven't looked at it, it's always a really good idea to take a look at it again too. So it's all sorts of information for you, and if it's not you, it's someone you know. If it's your parents, a lot of us out there have parents that are getting ready for this, and they probably haven't done it. Get yourself entered in a win. We've got to get 5 of them away. That's Estate Planning, a Plain English Guide to Wills and Trusts. And our number here is 602-277-5369. And toll free, it's 1-866-536-1100. I love these books. I love them because they are great for even if you're 50, 55 and older, or if you're 50, if you're younger, you should do it. If you're married, if you have children, you should do it.
Well, I specifically chose a young family to put on the cover of this book because I think they are some of the most likely people to not make any plans that should. And let's face it, things happen. So what you want to do is you want to know what's going to happen to my kids. Who's going to take care? How will they have access to my bank account? How do they even know where the life insurance ought to go? Well, are they going to get all that money right when I pass away? There's a million things to think about as a young parent. Not to mention, if you have more than $50,000 or in some cases $75,000 of equity in your home, you're going to leave somebody with a probate mess. And a probate is a legal proceeding that takes place whether you have a will or not. But if you have more than this threshold limit of assets outside of your trust, then somebody's going to have to deal with a legal proceeding where they invite all the creditors out there to say, hey, come on down, make a claim. It's a public notice. You've heard, you've seen in the news wills that are actually the whole will is published. James Gandolfini is a recent example of that. Everybody in the world knew what exactly was in his will. And in fact, can't remember her name, but Mick Jagger's girlfriend that just passed away, her little 2-page will is on the internet today, and you know exactly who she wanted to leave things to. So it's not something necessarily people want to do.
Almost a little like airing out your laundry in a way.
Yeah. And sometimes there's a lot of commentary that can catch a lot of attention. Why did she leave out so-and-so? And,
but she has that right.
People, absolutely she does. But then there, you get the gossip people, a lot of things to gossip about.
Sure,
and most
like
of us, of course, nobody cares what's in our wills. We're not, famous people.
But our kids do.
But our kids do, and they don't want the laundry to be aired in public.
Now, I like this one, chapter 4. It says, "Trust me." What's that about?
Yeah, so the trust, it's kind of an interesting play on words, I would say. A trust means you really it's a separate entity that you set up, and it's like another person sitting at this table. And that trust is like a little company, and that company does business just like an LLC or a corporation does. And so what happens when you pass away is you basically change the owner or the manager of that LLC. So that person now is in charge, and you have to really trust that person to handle your affairs properly. In a trust, we write it up to where while we're alive, we get to manage those affairs, and we can revoke it at any time. We can, put things into it. We can take things out of it. It's just as if you were, not having to deal with it at all.
And estate planning is not just for the older people.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So business owners, for instance, who don't have the time usually or won't take the time to think about this stuff, are not taking the time to say, hey, you know what, I really ought to probably put some thought into this. So, but the point is, if you get hit by the bus, the proverbial bus on the way home from work, and you're in a coma, what's going to happen to your business? So even while you're alive, a trust can kick in, and somebody else can be stepping in to be your trustee, your successor trustee, or your temporarily acting trustee, and they can continue to run your business, take care of, talk to the doctors, all those good things. All of that is part of this. Now, I don't want to be the doomsday guy that says, well, gosh, well, you're only talking about if horrible things happen to me, and I don't want to think about horrible things. Well, that's why we don't, a lot of people don't get around to doing this till you're 50, 55, 60, later in life. But they really ought to be thinking about it sooner.
Definitely.
And that's one goal here.
Definitely. Doesn't matter your age, and especially if you have children, and even if you are older, we do need to make sure that all of our ducks are in a row. And the book is called Estate Planning. We are starting to get our calls. You can call in, and you can either ask a question or not. It doesn't matter. We're going to give 5 of these books away. I think everybody, again, I love having books like this because I get to look at that and take and kind of go over it. If I have done something, then I should say something in there that I might have not done. I can check on it. It's a resource for people. It's a great book, and it's Estate Planning, a plain English guide to wills and trust.
Yeah, and the thing is, I appreciate that. Thanks for the compliment. But what I really wanted it to be, though, was also entertaining. So there are lots of specific, scenarios, real life stories, and a lot of people see themselves or their parents in those stories, and it's like, ooh, yeah, okay. And some are actually kind of funny.
Well, we're going to talk about that. And our lines are open here. We're giving away 5 of these. Our number here is 602-277-5369. He works with people nationwide, and he does 1-hour free consultations for everybody. His phone number is area code 480-807-9300, estateplanningdr.com. Call here and get yourself entered in to win a book. It's 602-277-5369. Okay, so we are back, and we are talking a little bit about estate planning. Clint Smith, you wrote this book for everybody. You wanted to bring in some humor into what's something that may not be so humorous all the time. It's a plain English guide to wills and trusts, and it's great for people to be able to get information and keep it there on their side, look at it, read it, laugh a little bit, say, that's interesting, I should do that. Go ahead.
Or at least to think about it, yeah. So, for example, there's a scenario in here. A young couple is married. They're living happily, and they have 2 little kids. The wife gets in an accident, and she's suddenly gone. So now we've got a single dad, a couple little kids. He remarries to a divorcee. She's got kids too. So we've got a widower and a divorcee getting married. They both have kids. Well, they get in an accident. Bad luck, right? They have held their house as joint tenants with right of survivorship. And a lot of people think, well, I'm covered then. If I die first, my wife gets it. If she dies first, I get it. No problem. Well, that's good for most people, but this situation is a little touchy. They get in the second accident, the husband is gone immediately. The second wife survives for a few days, then she dies. Guess what happens to all of the value of the house?
Nothing.
Well, it all goes to her kids. So his kids.
It goes away? Oh, it goes to her kids.
Because that's what the state of Arizona says happens if you die without a will or without a trust. So that's letting the state write your will is not always a good idea. And there are a lot of people out there with second families that ought to be thinking about some of these kinds of things. By the way, we talk about funding when we do trusts and such too, and we look through all your documents to make sure you're set up properly, because you may still have your ex-husband on your life insurance policy.
Check that! Big time!
Might want to take another look at that.
Right.
But there's all kinds of implications from mixed families and the things that go on in the real world.
Now, you're located in Mesa, can work with people nationwide. You do free 1-hour consultations with everyone.
Yeah, and in most situations, we can get a lot done in that hour, and I can educate people on what their options are. And generally speaking, I can tell them at the end of that hour, if you want me to do something, here's what it would cost to do that. Here's what it would cost to do that. So, but there's no obligation. If they don't want to do anything, then they say no, thanks, and that's all good. But we can tell them, and it's a flat fee. We don't nickel and dime you.
Okay, got it out there. Now, the other thing that I wanted to ask you, if somebody has started to do some kind of a trust, can they start with you and begin the trust? Because something changes. People's life change as they're going on. Once they have done it, is that a done deal, or can they come back? Then they work with you. How do you do that?
That's a really great question. So the thing is, yes, a lot of people do have a plan. It may not be the ideal plan, but it's a plan. And the question is, can I modify it or just kick it out and start over? Absolutely. All of those things are possible. About 40% of us don't have any plan at all. So that's really what the goal was here, to catch those guys. But people that already have a plan, for example, people that go to the seminars, sometimes there's a seminar that you can go to and you can sign up and you can get yourself a little notebook that has a trust in it and has a will, and you fill in the blanks. And
what do you think about those?
Well, I think there is a place in the world for that. But the problem with it is most people go home and they don't do what they're supposed to do. They stick it on the shelf and they don't think about it, and so it doesn't get funded. So like I was telling you, this other company sitting here at the table, we didn't put any money in there. We didn't put a house in there. We didn't put the mutual accounts in there. We didn't put the things that needed to be funded into that account. So it doesn't matter that I had this nice notebook that says I have a trust. There's nothing in it. So all that stuff is still my personal asset, and basically it still goes through probate.
Well, there you go. You said a mouthful, because a lot of people do that, where they go to somebody who does, they might be document preparers, where they do that sort of thing. And they have created this little document, which is put into documents, I should say, that are put into a notebook, and they consider that done. It's not done.
It's not done. And in my own personal situation, you learn one thing in this business, and that is you don't do family work for family, right? So I found a good lawyer. Actually, my mom found a lawyer, and I checked them out, and they were good, in California to do her trust. And they charged her a boatload of money, and they did this nice trust. And I looked through it, and I didn't see the deed to her house. So, by the way, I trusted that lawyer, so I was looking at it now while she's really ill. She's 84 years old, and I'm looking through her book, and I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. It doesn't look like this house is in your trust, Mom. So I get a hold of those guys, and I look on the county recorder. I see the house isn't in the trust. I have them overnight me a proposed deed. We sign it. We get it recorded. She passes away 48 hours later.
Oh, really?
If we had not put that, because I assumed those lawyers did that. That's what they're supposed to do, is fund the trust. Well, they didn't.
So, right. So you do have to check them. The book is called Estate Planning, A Plain English Guide to Wills and Trusts. It's by Clint W. Smith, J.D., for Juris Doctorate. Is that, did I say it correctly?
Juris Doctor.
Thanks. Okay. And our number here is 602-277-5369. Toll free. It's 1-866-536-1100. And I think everybody should have this book. I think people who have children, who are married, who are getting married, it's a great book to give as a gift, as a wedding present. Oh. And but seriously, folks, it really, really, really is a good idea to have. Great references on it. Our number here is 602-277-5369. Toll free, it's 1-866-536-1100. And you can give this as a gift to somebody. And I know it just seems like it's not like, well, that's not a nice gift, but actually it's a gift of love.
It is. It seems a little boring, and I know it's a boring title, but it helps you get found. And the bottom line is, it's not, I can't make it a sexy topic. It's just not. But people need to be thinking about, important things. And so you start off with the little cartoon, the guy's standing at the pearly gates saying, how do you know if you can't take it with you unless you try?
Right.
So, it's just a little, pun humor. And so you want to make it a little bit interesting, and we try to get people's attention with that.
And anybody out there who has already have done so, you still might want to check it. Like you said, there could be mistakes. Things change big time. If you were married and you made something years ago and you never changed it, happens a lot, I bet.
It does happen a lot. When people get upset with their children, or their children are into rehab or make bad decisions otherwise in their life, and they're like, well, I don't want to leave that person a bunch of money, so it takes a little modification, and that's not hard to do either.
So call us here. We have our lines open here. Our number is 602-277-5369, and toll free, it's 1-866-536-1100, and get entered in to win. We're going to give 5 of them away. I have no idea how many people calling right now or not, but the Estate Planning, A Plain English Guide to Wills and Trusts. And again, I think that everybody should have something like this. If not, it's a guide for you. It's an idea of what you might need to do.
At least it's something to think about. We were talking before the show with somebody here in the studio, and it's like, well, my dad makes a conscious decision to not spend a bunch of money, don't even bother the will. That's not my problem. That's going to be your problem. And some people are like that. So sometimes it's worthwhile.
What happens when that happens?
Well, if there's no will,
it automatically goes into probate, no matter what.
It goes into probate. Well, if there's this threshold, $50,000 usually threshold.
Okay.
So now we're talking about going into a legal proceeding, having to hire lawyers and all that good stuff that people generally don't want to have to do. And it takes time. You can't just have immediate access to somebody's bank account without a court telling you it's okay. I mean, there's just a million reasons to think about that. But some people make that conscious decision. Well, if I were in that situation and my mom hadn't thought about it and I knew I was going to be left with that kind of a mess, I might drag mom kicking and screaming down to take care of it. In my situation, my mom happened to have a desire to take care of things so that it wouldn't, be a mess for us. It costs more. It does. God, let's say it. Let's face it. A trust is not as cheap as a will, but it's still not crazy expensive. It's anywhere between $1,000 and maybe $2,500 to do that whole package of all that stuff.
Should people have both?
Yeah, as part of an estate plan, you would have both. What happens is you set up the trust and you put most of your assets in there, but like your personal bank account and maybe your little, 5-year-old car or whatever, you don't have to put everything into that trust. So you have those still in your personal name, and what you do is a will we call a pour-over will, because it's going to grab whatever's not already in the trust and pour it in. And then it can be distributed through the trust like anything else.
He's located in Mesa, can work with people nationwide. His phone number, it's 480-807-9300. On your website, do you have a lot of information there too?
Yes, I do. I have links to a lot of things. I actually have a whole YouTube channel too with a lot of videos about various of these topics. So I can be found. Just Google Clint Smith estate planning. I'm all over the place. So.
Again, his number is area code 480-807-9300, estateplanningdr.com. He does free 1-hour consultations nationwide, and we have our lines open here for everyone who's calling in. You're going to get entered in to win a signed autographed copy of the book, Estate Planning, a Plain English Guide to Wills and Trust. Again, our number here is 602-277-5369, and toll free it's 1-866-536-1100. We have a few more minutes. I just want to ask you a question. If you are nationwide, aren't there different laws for each different state?
Yeah, there are some things to be careful of in that, and some of the states are frankly a little bit weird. When we say nationwide, there are certain states that I don't want to mess with. I'll just send them to somebody. Like, for instance, Louisiana has a whole different basis for it's French. What are you going to say? It's a whole different basis for their whole system of laws than everybody else has. So there's a few little nuances like that, but mostly we can handle wherever it goes.
Okay, and again, the book is called Estate Planning, a Plain English Guide to Wills and Trust. We're going to let you call throughout the rest of the show for it at 602-277-5369. Toll free, it's 1-866-536-1100. It's informational. It's a great guide for you to have and look and make sure that you have done everything. If you haven't, it's going to give you some great ideas of what to do. And if you haven't, you really need to start looking into doing it. Again, the number here is 602-277-5369. Toll free, it's 1-866-536-1100. Call in throughout the rest of the show for it and get yourself entered in a win. Estate Planning, a Plain English Guide to Wills and Trust. Or give him a call. His number is 480-807-9300, estateplanningdr.com.